Ladies and gentlemen, we were lucky enough to sit down with Brian Wood today. Brian Wood is a former member of the British military, and he told us an incredible story about how they got ambushed. And
my goodness,
yeah, he has dealt with a shit ton of adversity, and him just being willing to, share that experience with us and share how he put off therapy for a long time and he finally did it. I think this is going to be a great episode for the listeners, and they're going to take away so much.
Yeah, I had chills listening to his story about, he's such a good storyteller. He makes you feel like you're there. Both Kevin and I were tearing up during this episode, especially towards the tail end when he talked about what his family had to go through and some of the difficulties he had in a court case that was brought up after the ambush. Basically where, he had to do the most courageous shit, and how he came out of that empowered and now expressing his truth. So huge, awesome rep. Anything else you want to say, Kevin?
No, I want to say that you guys are going to love it.
Enjoy.
Bye. No. Geographically? Geographically. This is cool. So I would say make sure that pretty face is showing.
Yes, true.
They're going to want to see that fucking thing. They're going to want to see that fucking thing, Alan. That fucking face. You good?
Ready? Good to go.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of the Hyperconscious Podcast. Today we're going to sit down with Brian Wood all the way from over in England right now, I believe, right? You're over the pond?
That's right.
Right on. And you are the author of Double Crossed, A Code of Honor, A Complete Betrayal. I'm going to kick it to Alan so Alan can explain how we touch base with you, and then we will hear your absolutely incredible stories.
Yeah, so thoughts become things, and Jonathan Moore we had on the podcast. Him and I spoke in Boston a while back, probably 2 or 3 months ago now. We had him on the podcast. He has a super empowering story as well, and then he referred us to you, and we were very glad that he did. Thank you for coming on the show. And so first and foremost, I just wanted to talk about, how do you know Jonathan, and how did this referral kind of happen?
Yeah, so John and I both served in the infantry together as young boys, basically. I was 16 and 9 months when I kind of put my bags on my shoulder, went to the train station with my parents, and they kind of waved me off, and I was going off into, this belonging, this incredible organisation, and also I was volunteering to protect this great nation. So John also did the same, similar age to me. I think he's a bit younger, but I'll always say he's a bit older, clearly. So we're kind of the same era. We joined at similar start dates, and then we just grew this brotherhood bond, really, throughout our military. And then he was always destined to do some great things. He was very smart, very clever, very driven, so much energy, belief within himself, and was... Yeah, like I said, he was destined to kind of do some cool things, and he's done just that. So, and we not long ago, actually, I think 2 years this September, we actually cycled across America together. We jumped on this, on bikes, and we started off at Washington DC, and then cycled 3,000 plus ish miles over to San Diego. So it was nice for me to hook up with him after so many years of fighting together and operating together, that we were reunited in his place now, where he stays and where he lives, and probably calls home now, I think. John's a very, very super cool, switched on dude who is going to do some unbelievable things. And we know each other really well, and he contacted us and linked us in and said, hey, you should chat. I mean, I've got a bit of a story. You guys are inspirational and very creative for what you guys are doing at the moment. So he said, look, you should link up. So that's the story.
Brian, you have more than a bit of a story. Your story is unbelievable.
Yeah, it is some story,
So,
unfortunately, because go on.
so I really think so. You speak. You're a speaker, like me, and
Yeah.
I think that stories are what move people. And I personally want to get better
Yeah.
at storytelling. But like, what is the story that you tell on stage to get people moved? And just kind of go into your speaker bio and like what you would say as if you were on stage giving this speech to an audience. So picture our listeners as your audience. Just run with it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's got to be true to me. It's so important that when I go on stage, it's coming from the heart. It's coming from all of my emotions that I've experienced from the last 10 years of being under pressure, having to cope with that pressure, and just really making it as raw as possible. Because if I structuralize it too much, if I'm keynoting, it's different because I have an understanding of what the business wants from me, what they want me to talk about, whether it's resilience, then a lot of my story, I will concentrate on how I was resilient through the time of adversity when I was really going through a tough time. If it's mental health, then I will talk about the time where, I was just really struggling at one point, because after experiencing so much trauma is an effect of the extraordinary. So we shouldn't be seeing trauma daily on a daily basis, and trauma does have an effect. So it affected me because of the amount of trauma that I'd seen, that I'd been involved in, and also what I caused. So if it's, like I said, mental health, I'll really go into and tailor it through mental health. So it's kind of, finding out what the engagement is and the why in capital letters, which is really important. And then I kind of draw the diagram off the why and make sure that I incorporate all of that with the audience as well. Because not long ago, I spoke to a private school over in the UK, 1,300 students, and the age bracket was 13 to 16. And I was like, right, how am I going to keep these engaged for an hour? Because they're young teenagers, they're in kind of the culture now where devices, are kind of, it's a bit of a drug to people. They need to be on their phones, and if they're not checking their phones after 15 minutes, then there's an issue. And so I kind of knew all this. But like I said, I kind of tailored that. So I've done an introductory video, which is like a song's length. So it's about 3.5 minutes long, and it is a punchy video, and it just gives an example of leadership and core values and what they mean, and it gets everyone engaged. And then I actually go on and give my intro. And I try and do an intro with a name, reason, and also an incentive why, because it's very important that they leave the room being incentivized. They're like, actually, that's pretty cool. And I do feel either inspired, motivated, engaged, and I've also taken something that I can learn and imply in my day-to-day life, not day-to-day business, day-to-day life. So, I mean, there's different ways. If it's just a spontaneous chat, I deliver my story and give people kind of an interest period. If it's corporate business, then I get a lot from them. I either spend half a day with the business to understand their mission statement, their intent, and their core values, and then I'll get an understanding from all of that. And then that evening, I'll then go on stage and talk about my experiences, but incorporating key subjects from what I've figured out and what I've learned from spending time with the business throughout the day.
Awesome. So the whole goal is to get them to say "me too" rather than "so what," right? And so I think it's awesome that you mentioned that people's attention span have gotten so much smaller, because it gives more of a challenge for us speakers to keep people engaged.
Yeah.
And it's huge that they connect a why with the person. So you kind of start out with what you've been through and like why that matters, and then you go into whatever the needs are of the audience.
Yeah, of course.
So in this case, our listeners being the audience, what we're really looking to do is pull back the curtain on what you've been through and why that's important, and what you've taken from that, and how you've kind of, a lot of our guests have like extreme adversity. We just had our last episode with Eric Legrand and Isabella Picard. Both of them were injured, and their spinal cord was injured. And you have a lot of adversity, and you just mentioned a quote that I just wrote down: trauma is the effect of the extraordinary. I love that quote. Can you go into what that means to you and kind of what you've been through?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said before, I joined the military in 1997, and I joined as a frontline soldier. I knew potentially we could go on operations, and I was prepared to do that because I signed up to, like I said, defend this country. And I went on a number of tours. I went and done 2 tours of Kosovo, which is kind of peacekeeping, but it set the foundations for me as a soldier. It actually grew me as a person. It made me kind of become a man, maybe quicker than a lot of other people my kind of age group would have become a man. And it cemented my foundations. And then I did my first tour of Iraq, which was life-changing. And it was life-changing for a number of reasons. And I'll specifically talk about a famous battle that I was heavily involved in. And I'll kind of take you through that battle, and then we can hit home on some key points. And we'll elaborate on trauma and the headspace and the mind. Do. And we'll absolutely just go for it. So it's the 14th of May, and it was 2004, and it was 14:30 hours, and I found myself and my other soldiers around me in the most violent of ambushes. It was overly intense. By this point, I'd been in country, so I'd been in Iraq, in Al-Amara, for about a month and a half. So I was quite embedded. I understood, the kinetic warfare, as in full-on engagements. I had been in positions like that previous to this day, but this was overpowered everything, because the vehicle that I was in the back of was just shaking all over the place by how volatile and how fierce this engagement was. And I was in the back in this armoured vehicle, and it was probably about 60 degrees, and I'm not exaggerating. 45 degrees it was outside in Iraq, inside the vehicle with no aircon, with the armoured doors shut. You were baking. So we were in this, I was a young commander as well, so I was a leader. I had men under my command, and I was 23 years old. So the vehicle was shaking. I knew it was a really, really demanding situation that we were in. But I kind of let my commander and the gunner of that vehicle deal with what they were seeing, because they had eyes on, they had visions where the enemy were. And at the back, I was disorientated. I was in the back and I can't see out the vehicle. So I kind of let them do their thing, compose themselves, start returning fire. And after about a minute or so, then I asked the commander, look, what's going on outside? And he said, we've just been ambushed. There's a dug-in, so they're in trenches. The militia fighters are in pre-dug, or they went into pre-dug trenches, and they are now fighting from these trenches. The numbers are 15 to 20 militia fighters, and the weapon systems that they've got is RPGs, Adushka, the traditional Middle Eastern variants weaponry, so AK-47s, to name but a few. So I was kind of doing my calculations in the back, thinking, right, we've got our own SA-80, what we use. We've got the vehicles and their main armament, which is like a 30mm cannon and 7.62 chain gun. So we're on par. It's fine. And then I reckon about maybe a minute and a half after that sort of initial conversation, then my commander gave me an order which would change my life forever. And that order was, Woody, prepare you and your men to dismount out of this vehicle, fix bayonets, and go full frontal attack on this main defended position. So I kind of did them emoji eyes, where my eyes kind of popped out of my head, because that was a call that really doesn't get done very often. The last time British soldiers went in with bayonets fixed was the Falklands War in 1982, or the Second World War, when they went and got out of the trenches and went over the top and started to advance on the Germans. So it doesn't happen very often, this close quarter fighting, hand-to-hand combat with bayonets fixed. It doesn't really happen. So I asked him to repeat the word of command. I said, can you say again that order? And he said, prepare you and your men to fix bayonets, get out of this vehicle and launch a close quarter attack on this position. So at this point, my kind of body went into overdrive. Everyone's had that feeling of, the butterflies, the adrenaline, whether it's going into a competition, whether it's taking kickoff for a football game, or whether it's getting married, you experience something in your stomach, which is butterflies and adrenaline. This was an experience I've never felt before. It was I call it an outer body experience, because the adrenaline just took over my body so much. It just was like an outer body experience, and my heart was smashing off my body, I'm afraid, because I was just about to get out of this vehicle and go into the unknown. I was disorientated. I was 23 and I had men under my command. And everyone talks about fear, right? Oh, did you get scared? What were you feeling? Of course I got scared. I'm only human. I've got emotion, right? And we as human beings go through an emotional cycle. So absolutely, I was scared stiff. Fear is massive, because if you dwell on fear, it can then take over the situation. It could then become, empowering other people to. If a commander is scared and he is really looking, with that fear amongst him, that is going to then affect the guys who are looking to follow you, because they're thinking, if he's scared stiff, come on, I'm gonna kind of question whether I'm gonna follow or not. So I kind of used that fear to best effect. So I kind of grabbed it and used it to actually get me out of that vehicle. If I'm honest, I actually used it to kind of push me out once that door became open. So yes, I was scared. There was fear. And I used that fear to best effect, and I used it to get me out of that vehicle. So I kind of told the guys what was going to happen. There was a countdown from 5 seconds, and on the 3 seconds, the door is on a hydraulic system, because it's an unarmoured vehicle. It's on a hydraulic ram, so you just can't open it because it's an armoured door. So it's on electric. So the button was pushed, the door opened. The sun was so bright, my eyes were squinting. I took the first step onto the desert floor. There's the kind of sand sprayed in my eyes. And then I looked at this a little bit. There was a little dried out irrigation, which I wanted to get to, because I still at this point never seen the enemy position. So I wanted to give myself a chance. So I seen it, and I just ran so hard, fast and aggressive into this dried out cover. So, I was going to go regardless. I was hoping my men would follow me, because, I was a leader of men. I was an influencer. I would like to think I inspired them, and I had a lot of courage. So I hoped that would rub off on them. But once that door was open, I told the guys in the back, I'm going to go regardless. They agreed that they're going to come with me, but you just sometimes don't know, because it's that fight or flight moment. And I was going to go regardless. So as I said, I went and I ran hard, fast and aggressive. I got into my stomach with my weapon system. I looked to my left-hand side and I see, the bravest of men following me. And we kind of lined up into this linear sort of line, undercover at the moment from this main trench. And I kind of told the guys to check themselves, because when you're overpowered by adrenaline, you don't know if you've been hit unless you're killed outright. You would not know, because your body is an absolute machine. And so I kind of checked myself, make sure I wasn't hit by anything. The guys did the same. And still, the vehicle was engaging. There was a massive Challenger battle tank that turned up, also was smashing stuff over our heads towards this main position. And we were out on the ground, kind of quite vulnerable. Still haven't got eyes on the enemy. And I crawled up to the bank, and I peered over like a meerkat to try and find and fix where this position was. As soon as I looked over, I'd seen it, and I'd seen the movement on there. And if I'm honest, I actually thought, once I seen what was on that position, I thought to myself, we've got no chance. But that's not inspiring. That's not leading. There is always a chance, right? Big shots sometimes come in, and it's really engaging with the values. It's really engaging with the mission and the intent of what I was ordered to do. And I revisited that in that split second, because as a commander, or as a business leader, or as, it depends on what walk of life that you're in, but you're always, when the pressure is on, and this is extreme pressure, you're always entitled to, I call it a cigar moment, where it's a pause 2-3. You get yourself out of the situation which you're in under pressure, and you have your analysation moment. So you're thinking, right, how do I get my men from here to there with minimum fuss and trying to make use of the ground as best use of the ground as possible to help us on the approach. And I kind of did that. And I also included the guys. Being inclusive is a big thing at the moment. You should always include the people around you, because it's the right thing to do, because there are the skill set, maybe, and especially when you're in that, you know, you're in the middle of something that you've not experienced before. I've never experienced just about to go over the top and start trench warfare, because that hadn't been done since the Second World War. So this is like a real unknown situation to me. And I wanted to use people's kind of experience as well. So I said, right, this is what I'm thinking about doing. This is the courses of action, and that's the end state. Has anyone got any input? So as calm, as concise as that I was speaking to them how I was speaking to you, because, you know, that becomes infectious. When they see you now calm and collective, they are reassured. I said to them, there's 15 to 20 men, there's 5 of us. And they looked at me like, that's kind of like 3.5 to 1. It is, but we've got some unbelievable courage. We're dedicated. We're motivated. And we can get this job done. And they were like, let's do it. Let's go. So I told the other 4 guys what I was planning to do. That we're going to work as a 3 and a 2. So 3 of us would get up and basically break all cover. And when I'm talking break all cover, I mean getting up over the top of this cover that we're behind, and it was flat desert. And that's the truth. There was no cover. We couldn't go right flanking. We couldn't go round to the left. We were just up and straight down the middle. And what we'd do is we would bound forward. We call it leapfrog in effect. So 3 of us would move first, start firing against the militia. Then the next 2 would move alongside us, and then they would start firing. Then we would move. So we've always got 1 foot on the ground moving forward. So we did this. And when I went over the top, I kind of felt like I was 20 foot tall, because I was so exposed. It was so flat, the desert floor. And I was just waiting to hear the dreaded call, man down, or someone was going to be killed in action. But we'd said, what we're going to do, if someone was hit, we just continue forward to this position, continue fighting. And then once whatever is in front of us was dealt with, we would go back and then patch them up. So we started moving forward and getting closer to this position, because it was about 120 metres away. And at this point, the rounds from the militia weapon systems were landing in and around my feet. So sand was puffing up, like right next to my feet. It was like going past my ears, like. So I knew we were pretty close, you know. The engagements were like unbelievably close to us, but we kept on going. And then we got 50 metres away from this position, and I thought, actually, we can do this. I still haven't heard the man down call being called, and we're doing all right. And then we get closer, and we're 30 metres away. I could start hearing them communicating now. I can see the movement. I can actually see now some militia fighters getting out of that main position and moving back. They're withdrawing. We've got the upper hand. We're 1-0 up because they've done that. They've showed signs of weakness. We are now, you know, suppressing. 20 metres away, bodies in and around the position now. Confusion to what the militia were doing, because they were going everywhere. And when you were just about to get into your last bound, where you're going in with bayonets, something called, you get a word of command, someone shouts pairs, and basically you just then go in with a pair and go straight through and clear anything which is in front of you. Close quarter battles, hand-to-hand fighting. And as we were just about to go in to go, you know, hand with this militia, all of a sudden they threw their weapons down and surrendered. So I was like, with a split-second decision, and it's so hard to do, because we don't get to sit in the chair in business chairs and go around the table and ask. You don't get to analyse a process like this, this is a hair's breadth. If you get it wrong, there's an issue. So you've got to really rely on the professionalism and trained and how well trained your guys are. Because when they throw their weapons down, we're governed by the Geneva Convention and rules of engagement. So once they throw their weapons down, we can no longer engage. Like I said, you get a hair's breadth to get it right. So it's, do not ceasefire, ceasefire, ceasefire. Do not engage. And then all of a sudden, we've got this militia. We're now into this main position. There's weapons everywhere. We can't engage because they've surrendered and become prisoner of war now. And there's a little bit of confusion, battlefield disorientation, confusion, waiting for kind of me to step up to the mark and give clear direction what needs to happen, which I said, we need to make sure that all the weaponry is moved away because that's the main threat. And then we start moving the bodies which are on the floor, which are dead, to one side, and then the POWs to another side. And then we manage that, and we can't go any further forward because we don't know if the battlefield is clear at this point. So we were going through all of this. We were plastic cuffing the POWs up. We were blindfolding them with their shemags because we didn't have any proper goggles. And we just kind of made best use of what we had on the ground with the improvised stuff that we used. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, my sergeant major turned up and said to me, "Woody, just give me a quick run through what's happened." So I briefed him, and he asked me a huge integrity question. And this, I've spoken to you kind of about the battle, and it's taken maybe 15 minutes, but this actually took about 2.5 hours to get from A to B. It really did take that long. And so he asked me a huge integrity question. He said to me, "Woody, is the battle space clear?" And I'm not being a coward, but I really wanted to say it was clear. I was desperate to say, yeah, it's clear, because I didn't want to go through what I'd just been through, because I knew I was so lucky to be alive. I knew the other guys with me were lucky to not even get a scratch. God knows how that had happened. I really don't know. But because of my values and who I am, and I live and breathe my integrity, so I said, "It's not clear, sir." And he was like, "Change the magazines. You're going to come with me, and we're going to go up on the southern bank, and we're going to clear up there." And I was like, "Oh, no." So I knew, because of what I'd seen on the approach, that we were going to come across more enemy fighters. I knew that. So I had another huge wave of emotion, put a fresh magazine on, and started to move forward up the southern bank. And then straight away, after 15 metres, two militia stood up with their weapons. Target left, we both, bang, engaged. Targets down. They've been dropped. We then moved forward on the right-hand side, see movement. Someone stood up with a machine gun with his up to his hip, just about to engage. We both engaged that militia fighters down. And I just couldn't believe it. It was like a computer game. This was just like craziness. And then moved again on the left-hand side. Another two ran, stood up, just about to shoot. Well, I think one got a shot off, but it was miles away. And then we just both smashed them two militia fighters. They went down. And then I actually said to my sergeant major, "Sir, we're really vulnerable. We need to go back to the main position where everyone was at." And he's like, "I agree." And as we turned our back to make our way back to the main position, I seen a flicker from the corner of my eye. I've turned around and there's two more militia fighters. And I was like, shit. And I've swung around to engage, and then they threw the weapons down. So then we went in to arrest them two. We took them to POWs. We walked down and took them to the main position. And on the way down, I was walking up the southern side, retracing my steps. And I seen our medics really working hard on the militia fight to try and revive them and work hard. But yeah, no one really sees this and documents it, because it's just, it's easy to do. It's easy to documentate the bad stuff, right? And then the stuff that people think is going to, people are going to read and people are going to listen to. So as I walked back, I've seen my medics really working, trying to doing CPR, putting chest seals on for someone who had been shot in the chest, and trying to putting tourniquets on someone's leg, like we should do, because that's what we're trained to do. Yes, they're enemy, but if they're wounded, then we should do our best to try and save life, and that's what we do. So I've seen that, and then I got back to the grass, and it was the first time I'd sat down for such a long time. This boiling heat, I was kind of I was battle shocked, to be honest. I couldn't really believe what had gone on. I started drinking some water, and sat down for 5 minutes, and then my sergeant major come up and said, "Willie, come here." And I went to him and he said, "Listen, brigade." So brigade is like the highest operators within our organisation. They kind of make the big, massive calls. And what they'd said is, because it was such a massive pre-planned attack, they thought the main militia leader, because we were involved in an uprising at this point, they thought the main militia leader was either had been killed on the battlefield or was a POW, a prisoner of war. Mm-hmm. So the call was made that we now have to go and retrieve these bodies, pick these bodies up, put them onto the vehicles, and take them back to our main operating base, which was Camp Abanaji. And I knew that was a weird, random call, because as a respect, you leave them on the battlefield for their own to come and collect. I knew this wasn't kind of the right decision to make. And also, I don't want to go and start lifting up these bodies that I've just taken their lives. You know, I took multiple lives from hand distance away and hearing their last gasp. I don't want to now go back and pick them bodies up and carry them. And they'd been hit by some super volatile and high velocity caliber rounds that they were like disfigured. You can only imagine what the state that they were in. And then to lifting these up and then putting them onto these vehicles was just like the hardest thing to give an order on, to do it. So it's hard. It's really hard for me to go to my men, we need to do this. But the only way around it was for me to pick the first body up, to kind of inspire the guys that, look, I'm going to do it also because it's the right thing to do. We need to do it. We've been told to do it, so let's do it. So we loaded these bodies up into the vehicles. I think we had 10 in each vehicle, and the POWs in a different vehicle. And then we got back to camp. At this time, it was dark. So as we got to the front gate of our main operating base, there was a load of commotion. Floodlights were on. I got out of the vehicle, and they said, "Right, Woody, you need to walk the vehicles up to the regimental aid post, which was a medical centre. The doctor's there with the body bags. He wants you to help get the bodies out and put them in the bag, where they're going to get the photo taken." I was like, "No problem." And I was covered in blood, and my whole uniform was I was in a state of just blood everywhere, in a state of shock. I got to the regimental aid post where the doctor was waiting, and he said to me, "Right, open the front of the vehicle's door, and let's get these bodies laid out." And like I said, the back door is on a hydraulic system, and you have to open it from the outside. So you press the button, and normally it goes and opens up. So when we pressed it, there was nothing. There was nothing. And the only other way to get this door open is for someone to climb through the turret, over the bodies, and then manually do this. So I was thinking, I don't believe this day has got worse than what it actually has been. I mean, how can you get worse than that day? But it's just had. So I said to the boys, I said, "Look, lads, we've just got to do paper, scissors, stones. And whoever draws a short straw has to go and do it, because it was only fair. We're all exhausted. We're all kind of shocked what had happened. And we've just put our straws in. So it's like paper, rock, scissors, paper, rock, scissors." Anyway, the driver lost. So he put a head torch on, and he just said to us, "Look, can you just talk me through this? Just reassure me everything's going to be okay." And keep talking. So he crawled through this turret over, and it was stinking. It was gopping with the smell coming from there. And he was like, oh my God. And I was like, keep doing what you're doing. It's well done. Come on, you'll do it. It's only going to take a few seconds. And he started hand cranking the vehicle. But what had happened on the battlefield is one of the British soldiers on the battlefield never checked one of the militia's pulse to see if he was alive before loading them on, like he should have. So this militia fighter was shot in the leg but played dead. But he was loaded on as dead. So as the lad in the back was hand cranking, all of a sudden, this militia fighter sits up bolt right, and I could hear screaming and all sorts going on. I was like, "What's going on? What's happening? He's alive! He's alive! He's alive!" I was like, "He's alive!" And as I said it, the British soldier squeezed out the width of that he's cranked his door open and sprinted away shouting, "He's alive." And I've looked in the back of the vehicle, and the militia fighter looked me in the eyes and just gave me the nod. Nodded his head as if to say, "How you doing, mate?" And I was like, oh my God. So I had to take him out, make him a prisoner of war, and then get him sent over to where the section that they were dealing with the prisoner of war. And it's just kind of, that day was just such a mess, because then we had to undo all the access plates for the vehicle because it was so full of like man fat, feces, you know, you name it, which comes out of the human body, was filling up in this vehicle. So we got underneath the vehicle, undone the access plates, drained all of the blood and guts and you name it coming out of these access plates, which are normally used for oil and lubes for the vehicle. And it was all coming out. And just about to hose the vehicle, because we were back out fighting the next day, because it's such a tempo tour. We were back out next day, so we had to really get this sorted out. So I was hosing we were just about to hose the vehicle down, where the medical corps people come up and said, "Woody, we'll do this. We'll sort this out. You go and get yourself showered and stuff." So I kind of walked over to the shower cubicles. They're not the best. They're just like a soda shower. I remember leaning across the wall and just seeing this blood and grit and sand just pouring down the plug hole. Just thinking, I can't believe that. That was just the craziest day. And then, so yeah, that was like massively crazy. Have you got any questions up to this point? Because what I'll do now is talk like briefly about my homecoming and my transition into normal life, which was really hard, and then I'll talk about the court case, if that's okay with you guys.
Absolutely. The only question I had, I mean, I have a million, but
yeah.
I love where the story's going, and Alan and I were just looking at each other like, I can't even imagine what any of that is like. So thank you for going through the story, and you told it so well that it was very easy to like kind of picture what was going on. You did an incredible job of telling the story. My only question is, when you're telling the story, and I'm sure you have a bunch, and obviously you've written it in a book, what do you feel when you tell the story now? Like looking back, do you still get scared? Do you still get like flashbacks of that? What do you feel when you talk about it now?
Not so much now. I mean, I have been in really bad, demanding places with the aftermath of everything. I'm not going to sit here and kind of be a macho man and say non-emotional. I just get on with it. It's bollocks. I have emotion. I'm a human being. I've experienced some pretty extreme trauma. So yes, there's been periods of time in my life that when I do tell my story, it still hurts. When I still kind of smell that smell. Mm. There's the snippets of kind of each phase the journey that I've been through. Different phases remind me of different things and different feelings, if that makes sense. So to answer your question, there is areas where I still see things. It was only actually recently that, I started to kind of see a lot of things and think about a lot of things that I haven't thought for a long time. But I'm now more mature and I understand my coping mechanisms now, because what I've been through a few years ago, that I can kind of cope with them and look at them in different ways. Before, where I used to just blank it off, park it, cover it over and just get on with it, but just terrorize everything in front of me because I didn't know how to deal with it until I went and seen a professional. So now I understand the feelings. I understand, sometimes I'm going to go back to these hard moments, and but I can actually control that now, where before I just did what I thought was the right thing to do. It wasn't, because a lot of the time where I was going through some hard graft, my family was affected the most because I took it out on them, really, on everything that I kind of experienced, because I didn't want to speak about my kind of mental state, because I was a leader, commander, decision maker. I was in an all-male organisation, 800 guys. I was respected within my unit. I was looked at as an, inspirational guy who had won the military cross, who went to Buckingham Palace to to get it awarded by the Queen, to all of a sudden, if I'm knocking on a door and asking for help, I thought everyone was going to look at me as someone who's been weak. Was I going to demotivate my men? Was I going to de-inspire my men? That's all these thoughts were going through my head. That's what stopped me from actually knocking on that door in the first place for 8 years. It took me 8 years after that to actually go and seek some professional help. But the reasons why is obviously why I just said, because, you know, I was in an all-male organisation. It's difficult to do that. But it's not. I made it difficult because of how I thought I was going to be looked at, where when I actually did it, I became more of an inspiration for doing it. And I know it was, I say this all the time, you know, it was 8 years too long, but it wasn't 8 years too late, because I still did it. And I can still talk to people and, you know, encourage people and try and chip away at the stigma about, you know, if you've got an issue, whether it's anxiety, depression, trauma, you know, pressure, it's okay to talk. It's the best way to initially get onto that first step. So, yeah, I mean, I've just digressed there, but that's kind of, you know, I do see it, smell it, feel it now and again, depending on the journey.
I'm so glad you actually went into the mentality behind it, because Alan and I are both big proponents of therapy and getting your thoughts out to somebody who is willing to help. And like you said, a lot of, especially men, we try to be macho and we try to, you know, hold the world on our shoulders, and that is not good in the long run. And like you said, you're hurting your family, you're hurting the people you love by holding that in. And yeah, that's great for you for realizing that, and great for you for realizing that it doesn't make you any less of a person for facing your demons.
Makes you more.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
Makes you more of a person, really. So one of the quotes that I live by, first and foremost, that story it gave me chills. You tell it in such a way that makes me feel like I'm there, and I know that all the listeners are going to feel that way as well. And I'm just super, super grateful that you came on and were willing to share that, because now we're going to be able to talk about your transition back into the civilian world, your takeaways from that experience. And I think that's going to be super valuable for all of us. First and foremost, just putting things in perspective. Like, obviously we all have challenges in our lives, but very few of us have ever gone through something that traumatic in terms of a life or death situation. And the amount of courage that you showed, I'm just super humbled, super grateful. And honestly, I just had chills through that whole thing. So one of the things that Kevin just mentioned, and the reason why he kind of laughed, is because my sister's dog walked through the door, like right in the middle of what he was talking about. So she's podcasting with us now. Her name is Shiloh. But one of the things that I kind of, a phrase that I coined, is the suppression of self-expression leads to depression. Yeah. And I think that I love what you said. It's 8 years too long, but not 8 years too late, because you did eventually come out and talk about it and express your truth. And that's really what this podcast is all about, is just really fully expressing what's real, and not only just expressing it, but discussing it to where you can figure out what's real. And you create these distinctions that you never would have had you not had the conversation. So thank you so much. And let's talk a little bit now about your transition into the civilian world and some of your takeaways from the military, and, you know, ridiculously courageous moments that you've had, life or death, versus, you know, kind of your life now, and the courageous moments, the little things that you need in your family and your business. Also, real quick, Brian, I just want you to know we got like 20 minutes left, so I want you to at least know that, so you can get in what you want to get in. And I know you wanted to touch maybe on the court case and all that happy jazz as well.
Yeah, of course. Definitely. That's what I was going to go on to now. I'm just going to kind of, you know, I'm not going to, you know, this is not me plugging my book, and it will come out into America as well, but I'm just skimming over so much. Oh, no worries. Plug away. Double Cross. Plug away. Yeah, in Double Cross, which is going to be released on the 14th of March, 2019. And it's the reason why it's been, I can't tell you the reason why it's been delayed actually, but there's a big reason why it's been delayed, and it's really, really exciting, the reason why it's taken so long to be published. But when it does, you can actually go into read the detail actually on everything, and because this is just like a small kind of chapter of actually kind of what I've been through. So it'll open a few people's eyes. So if you would want to, have a look at it, then it'd be cool to do that. But what I'm going to do now is just kind of touch on when I came home. So before I went to that tour in Iraq, we had our first child, and Bailey was 3 weeks old. I kissed him on the forehead, kissed my wife at 23, and I shut the door behind me and kind of really didn't know what to expect when I was going into when I was going to war, really. And when I got back, we didn't do any decompression. So 1 minute I'm fighting like mad to survive and against a really, difficult enemy, which is known internationally wide. To then all of a sudden the next day I'm walking through my house, and now my son's 6 months old, and the early stages as a parent is kind of really key for the mother to get the bonding right, which is absolutely the right thing. Mother and child is so important. So I missed a lot of that initial bonding stages clearly, and then I went away for 6 months, came back, and now he's kind of 6 months old. I hold him, he'll cry. Feed him, he'll cry. Tell him a bedtime story, he would cry because he just wanted his mum, and that was kind of difficult for me. And I became kind of, a bit angry. I wanted it to be me. I was desperate to be for me to be this dad that I was on a kind of a fast track learning course, but I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to be a dad. I knew how to be a soldier. I didn't know how to be a dad. So that was really demanding. It was playing a lot of havoc with my headspace also. It was just really difficult. And then 5 days, I came home a month and a half early from that tour to go on a promotional course. And within 5 days of me being home, I got a phone call. From my sergeant major who's in the UK saying one of the lads has been killed in action. Would you be part of the repatriation? So I had to, I did that, absolutely. I was going to give him the best send-off. So I went and done that whole repatriation for Ray, lowered him into the ground, rolled up the Union Jack, handed it over to his mum. And it was just sort of really demanding kind of, a cycle for me. And then 5 days after that, we had another soldier killed in action, which I then went and done the whole, repatriation for him as well, which was just one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. It's punishing, heartbreaking. And then it just had to switch everything off, which I thought was the right thing to do. Just switch everything off and get on with life, which I tried to do. But I was shattering a lot of things on the way on this path. I was like just causing havoc with a lot of people. And in 2009, I was on my commando course to get my Green Beret. I was on this course, and my wife phoned me, and she was quite a little bit upset. And I was like, "What's happening? What's wrong?" He said, "I've just received a letter, and the letter states that there's going to be an inquiry. There's going to be a public inquiry, so it's going to go out to the public in the UK, and the inquiry and the allegations are murder, mutilation, and mistreatment of Iraqi farmers." And I was like, read that to me again. Read it to me again. It can't be me. It's not my name on this, surely. It can't be me. Anyway, it was my name, and these allegations then went, all over the UK. Then my phone started ringing. I started getting text messages saying, is it what I'm reading in the papers? What's happening? So then all of a sudden I was justifying every single action that I did when I knew I couldn't get my head around all these allegations anyway. I just thought, they weren't farmers. They were like militia fighters. They were professionals. These were the enemy, and they ambushed us. We reacted, and we were just better on the day. How this came about, I was fighting hard for my winning country. I don't understand this. I just really couldn't understand all of this, what was going on. And then I was speaking to my parents and saying, look, it's all nonsense, it's lies. And it just, it took us through such a new roller coaster ride that, I just couldn't believe now all my values that I lived by were now in question. People started to ask me questions, and even though they didn't mean it, they wouldn't have asked me them questions if this public inquiry hadn't came out, i.e. what happened on the day. So all of a sudden, I was now spending 10 years explaining myself or justifying myself. And when I should never have done that, I was awarded a medal for bravery. I was, there's so much great courage shown on that battlefield that day from the bravest of soldiers, to all of a sudden, it's all up in the air now. And I just couldn't get my head around it. And I'm going to quickly fast forward to, so basically in the UK, there's a court that we're governed with because it's the kind of United Nations Court of Law, and I don't know the real ins and outs of the detail of it, but basically they looked at the evidence that the Iraqis were coming up with, all these false claims that they were coming up with, and actually our British government was paying British lawyers, British public interest lawyers, to go and take on these claims. And they were spending so much of the UK public's money. So the public inquiry, the Al-Sweady public inquiry, the inquiry that I was heavily involved in, cost £31 million. And it was through a man called Phil Shiner, who was a solicitor, a public interest lawyer, who was basically paying middlemen in Iraq to come up with false allegations. But the UK government system was allowing this to happen and was funding him to do so. And I ended up fighting a harder battle in the UK on my home soil than I actually did on operations fighting against an international known enemy. It broke me in half. It broke my heart to the point in 2014 I had to go to the courtroom. I've never been to court, and I've gone into this courtroom, and it was packed full of people on the bleachers, because it was a public inquiry. All the members of the public could attend this. So it was an up-and-coming solicitor's dream, so it's stacked, press everywhere, paparazzi everywhere. And then I've gone into the dock, and they are questioning my integrity, questioning my statements, questioning me as an individual, questioning my leadership ability. And I was just like, you've got no credibility to me to ask me these questions. You haven't and will not be brave enough to sign on the dotted line and swear on the oath and go and fight for this great nation. You wouldn't do that. You haven't done that. You haven't walked a yard in my shoes. For you to question me about my leadership ability, making split-second decision-making in extreme circumstances. And we did that with the highest of values, with impeccable integrity, and you're questioning me. You haven't got the right to do that. And it's heartbreaking that you're asking me these questions. And if you continue to do this, this will affect decision-making on future operations, because people will be scared, soldiers will be scared to make the right decision, because they may end up here like me, in this dock, pleading my innocence. I said, this is carnage. I was a young British soldier, doing what I was told to do, doing what was right. So now, 10 years later, because it took 10 years to get to this point, 10 years later, coming up here and justifying myself, it's heartbreaking. It's massively out of order. And then, a year later, that Phil Shiner was then found guilty of 34 accounts, 12 accounts of dishonesty and lies and deliberate lies. He was a shyster, and he was involved with a group of people who just, through downright greed, bloodthirsty, greedy individuals, punished so many courageous and great British soldiers that it's just, we were betrayed. We were betrayed. We were double-crossed. And like I said, not one person in the government at that time, when I was going through a real hard time, phoned me or my family up and said, do you need any support? We'll get someone around the house. Everything's going to be okay. Because my wife is thinking, right, because it's all out in the press now, is this going to be an eye for an eye? Or are we going to get some militia knock on the door? You know, she was scared out of her wits. And then, you know, my son's at school and all of a sudden Bailey's dad has killed innocent civilians. So then I've got an issue at school with my son because you know what kids are like. And I'm trying to deal with all of this, thinking, right, this is just, it's got out of hand so much. And I know we got to the verdict and he was, you know, stripped of all practice, and he then declared himself bankrupt. Will never do what he loved in his profession again, but on the way, he was a savage, and what he caused was so much pain and hurt. And yeah, it's just a shame that our government wasn't strong enough, because we're the only country to be treated like this on the word of the enemy. No other country would do that. America would never allow that. On the word of the enemy, you're going to go against your British soldiers. Are you fucking mad? Yeah, this is a joke. And it was just, even now I can't get my head around it. Yes, we had a good result with Phil Shiner, and there's now rules and implied that we can't allow this to happen again. But how it happened in the first place is a disgrace to this nation. And I love my country so much, but that was a disgrace because it's not fair.
Do you feel...
So that was...
Do you feel like... So the hardships that you and your family endured are unfathomable. Am I not talking loud enough? Yeah. Okay. Kevin's saying I need to talk a little louder. The hardships that you and your family endured are unfathomable, but do you feel liberated in a sense on a personal level from the fact that you're able to express your truth now? Obviously not fully because of a good reason now at this point, but also liberated in the sense that this is going to change because of this difficulty that you've endured.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, you know, it's a small win for me, because that means that moving forward now, there's definitely going to be something put into place 100%. And that's what I wanted from this. It needed to happen. It has to happen. It's unfair to kind of bring, you know, all of this up. It's, it's unfair, and it wasn't good enough. But however, liberated, yes, because there is something going to be now put into place, and it has to be.
I just want to express my gratitude for you being willing to tell this story for us and our listeners. Unbelievable adversity. Again, even hearing it, I was almost crying. Definitely on the brink of it. Certainly had chills. And I also want to express my gratitude to Jonathan as well for referring you to us. I, without a question, will be reading your book for sure. And I definitely want to, you know, encourage all the listeners to really read that book as well, because I know you only touched the surface here. I know we have a couple questions that we always ask our guests, and if there's anything else that you do want to express to the listeners, to us, please do so. One of the things that Kevin always asks, do you want to go into that question?
Yes. So, Brian, my favorite question to ask people, and honestly, I think it might be a little different for you because you've actually put your life on the line. So what do you hope to accomplish with your time here? What do you want to accomplish before you die?
To raise as much awareness as possible, whether it be for mental health, whether it's to help and inspire the younger generation to make change. That's what I really was passionate about doing. I love helping people, whether it be to do with sports, to do with kids who are more unfortunate than other kids, or to really campaign and raise awareness for the two most powerful words, which is mental health. That's what I really want to kind of push forward with and achieve. I
would say you're definitely on the path to doing that. You're telling your story is helping so many people, especially the fact that you said, you know, I waited a long time to get the help I needed, but I eventually did it, and that's what matters. I think that you are a leader in that regard, and a good one, with the fact that you're willing to tell people that, you were scared and you were vulnerable, but it's going to be okay if you're willing to put yourself out there. So I commend you for that 100%. I think you are doing what you want to, and you're definitely changing lives. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're living in your purpose for sure.
I appreciate that, Kevin.
Absolutely.
You're living in your purpose for sure. And one of the questions that I like to ask often is about PTSD versus post-traumatic growth. We focus a lot on PTSD, and you personally have endured more PTSD, than I could ever fathom. Jonathan talked on his podcast episode about how a plane only takes off into the wind. We all only take off into adversity. And seeing you kind of on the other end of this unbelievable adversity and being so empowered to inspire and empower others is just huge. Do you want to talk a little bit about, or would you be willing to please talk a little bit about PTSD versus post-traumatic growth and your experience with it before we leave?
Yeah. My only issue is my son has got his football presentation, and it's like starts really soon, and I need to go and see that because he asked me. He said, "Make sure you're there," and it's like,
"Oh, no worries.
I'm actually going to be there." And the thing is, this for me, right? And I would love to because it's a big part. Post-traumatic stress, post-traumatic growth is a big thing for me, and it really means so much. But so does my family, and it's like, it's after a year of his football, he now goes and does a presentation. So they get their awards for best player and best endeavour or best newcomer, and it's starting soon. And it's like, I'm a little bit under pressure for time.
But, you need to get over there, and hopefully he gets all the awards, and we will. I want to be able to shake your hand in person one day and sit down and do more of this. So I think that's my goal, is to meet you in person and further talk.
For sure. And you can answer that question in more in depth next time we do meet. And we'll make sure that we try to get you back on the podcast as well. And obviously you need to lead by example and be the father you need to be right now. So nothing but respect.
I really appreciate it, boys. Boys, honestly, keep doing what you guys are doing. I know we spent an hour and 10 minutes speaking about kind of me, but you guys inspire. You guys have got so much energy. You want change. You see it, and what you guys are doing is kind of what I hope to do in the future. Honestly, it is remarkable. So you should pat yourselves on the back and keep attacking and keep doing what's right, because there's not very many guys like you, and you're killing it. And never give up doing what you should do, and keep believing on what you're doing is right, because it is, and you're nailing it, and it's incredible. And I've had a real pleasure coming on here. Alan, Kevin, it's been incredible, and I hope to meet you in person soon. And I'm in touch. I follow you guys on social media. I'm on Twitter and Instagram, so you can kind of follow a bit of a story in the journey on the platforms. And I'm happy to answer people with direct messages. I'll always give people time of day, because it's, you need to be humble, and you need to kind of repay people as well. So I love doing that. But boys, I really appreciate being on today. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Give our best to your family, and I hope Bailey gets all the awards and all that stuff. And it was a pleasure talking to you, Brian.
It's an absolute pleasure. So humble.
No worries.
So humbling to meet you.
Lads, look after yourself. Look after the people who mean the most. And like I said, I hope to see you guys soon in person.
We absolutely will. Can't wait.
Take it easy. Look after yourself.
You as well.
Thanks again, Brian.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.